Hi, I'm Jeremy Scott and welcome to the Jeremy Scott Spiritual Podcast, the podcast that takes a no-frills approach to all things spiritual. Hi guys, how you doing? In the park today, enjoying a nice cup of coffee, and I thought let's jump on and record an episode. I'll just sit quiet for a moment. You'll be able to hear some birds in the background. Yeah, it's lovely to sit here in the park and enjoy, nature in this way. And it's been raining overnight, so maybe they're a bit happy because it's a bit cooler, perhaps, or the worms are out or whatever, but they're certainly full of the joys of spring. So this time what I want to look at or discuss is how we view ourselves. And question would be, in that sense, when you look in the mirror, who do you see? What do you see? And obviously the vast majority of us will say, well, say me. See how I look, a mirror image of me. But even that, from that point of view, isn't a true reflection, is it? Because the mirror image is like opposite to what we actually are. It's not how others would view us in that sense. It's a different way of viewing it. Everything's left is right, right is left, that kind of situation. So we call that a mirror image, like an opposite image. Whereas if we're photographed, we have like a truer image of ourselves in that way, and how others would view us. But what do they see? What do you see when you look at yourself? You see someone that you identify as yourself. You see someone who's tall or short or slim, or perhaps needs some attention in that regard, or with hair, without hair, glasses, no glasses, shiny white bright teeth, or otherwise. You see yourself in all different ways, don't you? Whatever way you want to view yourself in that way. But is that really you? It's how we identify ourselves, isn't it? This is me in the mirror, This is me in this photograph. This is me as others see me. This is me as in this human form. And we identify ourselves as that, and then we identify ourselves in so many different ways, by the clothes we wear, the fashion we follow, or if we follow fashion. We identify ourselves by the material accoutrements that we have. We identify ourselves by the car we drive, the amount of money that we have in the bank, the status that we have, the number of bits of paper that we've got from a university, and all kinds of things like that. But is that really us? From a human perspective, a purely human perspective, yes, that is us, that is you, that is me, whatever it is. But it's not the real us, is it? It's not really you. I think it was a few episodes back, I quoted, it may not have been, it may have been on a video when I think about it. I quoted a quote from a guy called William Blake, who's a philosopher. And he talked about, when you look not to see, but look to see through your eyes. So in other words, look from the soul's perspective. What do you see from the soul perspective? Because we are, as many of us now know, souls enjoying a human experience. We come here from, for want of a better term, spirit realm. Some call it, the 5D or whatever, or astral plane, whatever you want to call it. We come from that space as energy beings, as spiritual beings, and we come into this 3D reality to be born and live an existence in this 3D reality, to experience everything that we do while we're here. And I've talked about this before, where before we come, we make some kind of agreement, maybe a soul contract or a kind of an outline of how we would like things to go. But because we have free will, that can change as well, can't it? That can change us in different directions. Sometimes that works out really well, and other times it doesn't. And quite often our free will take us down certain roads or certain paths which are not very useful to us, are very detrimental to us. And that can be everything from having a certain lifestyle which causes a lot of mental, spiritual, emotional or physical conditions or issues, to having a kind of egomaniac kind of feeling or living, where you want to be in control of everything and everyone and in every last detail, and you think you are it in big capital letters, and you think you are the one to rule over all and that kind of thing. And we've seen how that's worked out in centuries, over the millennia, where you've got egomaniacal yeah, it's one of those days, egomaniacal rulers in the past, who have started to charge into other countries to take them over and suppress the people, to kill and destroy and to pillage and things like that, and to rape and all kinds of things like that, to rule over huge swathes of other people's property in that sense. And that's how all the wars and that started, and obviously there's been reprisals against that over time. And we still see those kinds of things that are happening today, whether that's in a warlike situation, or whether that's in politics, or whether that's in corporate life, or whether that's in just everyday life. They're at all kinds of levels. And that's not them being their true selves either, is it? So when we look at our lives that we have here in this 3D existence, as I call it, 3D reality, we should really, I say should, it would be better perhaps to look at it in more like we're already in a virtual reality kind of situation. We don't need to create any more. We're already in one. We are already creating our own experiences, our own existences in that way. And everything we see around us that is what I would call human-made is what we've created ourselves. Nature has been created by another source, the higher source, I would say, in that sense. But we ourselves, we've created ourselves in this way. We've chosen these bodies that we have, and we've chosen through free will to use those bodies in whatever way we see fit at any particular time, and we always think it's a good idea at the time. But then we do make choices which are, as I said, detrimental, and we go down rabbit holes that we shouldn't go down, as I've said before, and I say shouldn't, but it would be better if we didn't, if we avoided. And we have got situations where we suddenly wake up one day and look in the mirror and say, I don't love you anymore, I hate you, and that takes us down other avenues which are best avoided. Because in true essence, we do love ourselves. From a soul perspective, we love ourselves from the inside out. We don't love ourselves from the outside in. What we see in the mirror, what we see in the photos, what we see in other people's eyes, reflected in other people's eyes, isn't truly us. That's just an image that we've put upon our true selves. Everything, as I've said before, is made of energy. We know that. And quantum science has proved that time and time again. We're all energy. Energy vibrating at various frequencies. The higher the frequency, the less visible. The lower the frequency, the more tangible. And we are at the lower end of the spectrum in these bodies in that way. So we should really love ourselves for who we truly are and not what we perceive ourselves to be. Because we are not those designer clothes that we wear. We're not that Rolls Royce that we drive. We're not that bank account. We're not that person who's abusing alcohol or other substances. We're not that egomaniac. We're not that killer, that rapist. We're not that Christian evangelizer. We're not the person who's a spiritual teacher. We're not the author. We're not even the podcaster, the fame. We're not the celebrity. We're not the A-lister, B-lister, C-lister. We are none of those in true reality. We're none of those. These are images that we've created for ourselves as we live out our existences on this particular plane of existence. And that kind of, yeah, you could say, well, that brings it down a bit. You know, it's a bit of a downer. But it doesn't mean to say we can't enjoy ourselves, and that's why we've come here, isn't it? To enjoy the experience that we came here to enjoy. And, you know, fair play, we may have chosen experiences which have gone down certain routes, you know, that may lead to substance abuse or homelessness or even criminality. You know, we may have chosen that this time round to experience what it's like to be like that. And perhaps in a upcoming lifetime we may make amends for that, and that's the karmic kind of view. But we're in control of that. We know we're doing that. It's when we make choices that go beyond that things get very complicated, that we lose sight of who we truly are and why we're here. And you can imagine that many of those who in the past, say, were responsible for mass murders, massacres, destructions of whole cities and things like that, when they've returned to the spirit realm, and by all accounts we do like a review of our life experience here, many times I can believe they'd be shocked and maybe traumatized by what they have done through free will, through losing control of that free will, you could say, as well, by letting it run free. And obviously then after a period of perhaps spiritual convalescence is maybe a good way of putting it, they'll want to make amends, and perhaps in the next lifetime they come back as someone who's a spiritual teacher or who lives a good life in a belief system, whether that's in Islam or whether that's in Christianity or Jewish or Hindu or Buddhist, whatever, or just being a nice person, helpful, perhaps penniless or on the poverty line, the bread line or whatever, but still being kind to others, treating others with love and respect to make up for what they didn't do before in a previous lifetime. So we don't know. All these things could be what's happening now. But the thing is, you know, when we look in the mirror, that's not you in the mirror. That's the main point. That's just a reflection of the person that you have chosen to be in this particular lifetime that you are in. And you've come here to experience a lifetime as a person in human form, in physical form, and you've come here to enjoy it as well. And as you do so, you make choices to do so. And I feel that as we progress further into the 21st century, as we are now, more and more people are becoming more aware of that we're not all that we see in the mirror. We're not identified by our status. We're not identified by bank accounts and where we live and colour of our skin and language that we talk or speak or use, the philosophies that we espouse or anything like that. These are just kind of accoutrements added to the form that we've chosen to use this time round. Kind of puts a bit of a downer on it, doesn't it? I wasn't really intending it to go that way, but the secret is that once we recognize that, we can love ourselves for who we truly are from the inside out. And I think that's the real message here, is that we don't love ourselves from the outside in, we love ourselves from the inside out, from a soul's perspective. When we realize and recognize who we truly are, then we can accept who we are in this form and what we're doing, love ourselves, forgive ourselves if necessary, and accept ourselves and make changes if we wish to do so. We have that choice. And there's so much more that's involved in this. That we're also here to help those who have perhaps gone astray, whose free will have gone awry, to help them get back on track, onto the true path and things like that, as well as ourselves. So there's many of us who have come down here to be guides, to be counsellors, to be coaches, to just to be a friendly neighbour, to be the positive person in the neighbourhood or in the street or whatever. And that helps to redress some of the balance that we may feel is overtaking us right now, all the negativity and all the different situations, the violent situations that are taking place, especially just recently and so on. And we can view those taking part in those situations from a soul's perspective and view them with love. Because we understand then from that perspective that what they have done, they thought it was a good idea at that time. They also will have that chance to perhaps wake up, to become more aware of what they've done, how they've acted and so on. And they can also start making amends whilst they're still here, turn completely around, as many have done when they've been to prison for a while for whatever crime, and then they've come out and they teach young people not to do what they did that ended them up in prison. There are those who will do that. I'm not saying that those who commit really vast atrocities and so on, some of those won't be coming out of prison, but they can change whilst they're in prison, and many do. Change their values, change their views, even write books. But they know they won't be walking free again, throughout this university of life. But they'll start to make amends in some way, shape or form. So when they do return here in a future lifetime, they can continue with that. So when we review our lives in that way, the life experiences that we're going through right now, makes you wonder what we did in our past lifetimes. But I would say it's probably best not to dwell on that. Perhaps we don't need to know that. Focus on the now. Focus in the now. What you're doing now is more important than anything that's happened in a past life, or even in past life experience, in this life experience, past times. What you're doing now, and every single now going forward, is more important. And if we love ourselves from within and accept ourselves from within, we'll certainly move forward in a much better way than perhaps we are currently. So there you go, guys. How do you feel about that? Do you still believe that that is you in the mirror? The mirror is useful because you can use it to tell yourself how much you love yourself. And I do that every morning and every evening. And I don't do it in a narcissistic way. because I'm loving and accepting myself for who I truly am. And you can do the same. So love yourselves from within, guys, and not from without. Until next time, namaste.